Congressman Adam Schiff, the top Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee, joins me now. Good morning, Congressman Schiff.
Good morning.
You heard Speaker Gingrich just say he doesn't trust Bob Mueller, but Bob Mueller is close to Comey. Does he have a point?
No, he doesn't, and I found it very hard, actually, to follow his argument, frankly. This is someone that, as you pointed out, Newt Gingrich was extolling just a few weeks ago. Nothing has changed. Bob Mueller's investigation is only getting started. The only thing that really has changed is the president is attacking Bob Mueller, and therefore Newt Gingrich is attacking Bob Mueller. But the reality is that members of Congress on both sides of the aisle find Mr. Mueller to be a man of incredible integrity and courage, who served his country with bravery in Vietnam, who served presidents of both parties, and it's going to take a lot more than a few presidential tweets or Newt Gingrich to try to besmear this very good man. I think he's
let's talk about the
right
Democrats
man for
he
the
was
job.
talking about,
Yeah.
Congressman Schiff. Is that a point? If he's got Democrats in there, if he's got people who've given to Clinton and other Democrats?
No, I think that anyone who knows Bob Mueller knows he is choosing the best people to serve on this investigative team, people that have experience in the issues that he wants to investigate and believes need to be investigated. As you and Pierre pointed out, he can't go through FEC filings to figure out, should I hire this person, should I not hire them? So he's picking the best people. I think members of Congress have confidence in that. But what's happening here is the president wants to take down Bob Mueller. His lawyer wants to take down Bob Mueller, and the question is why? And I think the answer is they want to lay the foundation to discredit whatever Bob Mueller comes up with. They're essentially engaging in a scorched earth litigation strategy that is beginning with trying to discredit the prosecutor. And that's all that's happening here. I don't think we should acquiesce in the besmirchment of this good man, and we ought to let him do his job. He is just getting started.
Well, you said recently you thought there was evidence of collusion. What kind of evidence have you seen? What can you tell us?
Well, I think there is evidence. I can't go into the particulars of our closed investigation, but I also think there's evidence of obstruction. But in both cases, I would say, whether there is some evidence doesn't mean that there is proof beyond a reasonable doubt. The same people that say that there's no evidence of collusion say there's no evidence of obstruction, and the president indeed cannot commit obstruction. I don't buy that. If you look at James Comey's testimony, and we were trying this in the court of law, no judge would exclude that. That would all be relevant evidence as to potential obstruction. And the fact that the president can fire someone for good cause or can fire someone with no cause doesn't mean that he can fire someone for malicious cause. The fact that an employer can terminate an employee at will doesn't mean that he can fire an employee because the employee rejected their sexual advances.
Congressman,
So
I want to go back to the collusion
yeah.
and the evidence. I know you can't talk about specific evidence, but he says Dianne Feinstein has said there's no evidence of collusion. So collusion between whom? Can you tell us that?
Well, the allegation, of course, is that the Russians in the hacking and dumping of documents in the election had essentially relationships with Trump campaign people and coordinated those efforts. Now, the FBI opened an investigation into that issue in July, well before Congress did. I think they did that for good reason in July. I think they maintain that investigation. It's ongoing for good reason as well. But I'm not prepared to say that there's proof you could take to a jury. But I can say that there is enough that we ought to be investigating. Indeed, it would be negligent for us not to investigate. And the principal reason is, Martha, that if a foreign government, in this case Russia, has something that they can hang over the head of our president or our administration that can influence U.S. policy, it is very much in our national security interest to know it. And we need to conduct this investigation. Now, Newt Gingrich and the president would like us to shut it down before it really is underway. And we are far closer to the beginning of the investigation than we are to the end. But it would be the worst form of negligence to our republic for us to say we're going to close the investigation before we can determine whether there is merit to these allegations.
ABC News has reported that Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein has started discussing whether to recuse himself. Do you think he should recuse himself, given his role in justifying James Comey's firing?
I think we ought to let Bob Mueller develop some of the evidence and determine what he needs to investigate. If Bob Mueller concludes that he needs to look into the circumstances, for example, in which Rod Rosenstein wrote that memo, If, for example, Bob Mueller were to conclude that there is evidence that Rod Rosenstein knew that the memo he was producing was going to be used as a pretext for the president to fire Comey for completely different reasons, that the president was going to fire Comey to inhibit or instruct the Russia investigation. I'm not saying that this is the case. I can't say what Mueller may or may not be investigating, but if he should conclude that Rod Rosenstein's conduct may be culpable in some way, then I think he can't report to Rod Rosenstein. And yes, Rosenstein would need to recuse himself. But there's no way for us to know that at this point.
And you've asked for tapes. If tapes exist from the White House, we should know soon. At least President Trump said we'll know soon whether tapes exist. Do you think they'll turn anything over? And if not, what happens?
I don't know. I would certainly hope by the date that we set in our bipartisan letter, the White House will respond that, yes, they have tapes. Yes, they will preserve them as we have urged and required. And yes, they'll turn them over. Or that, no, in fact, there are no tapes. It was an idle threat. But one way or another, we need to get an answer. And if we can't get an answer, then I think we need to, we'll ultimately need to subpoena those potential documents to make sure that we have them.
And you have said you believe James Comey's testimony, if accurate, was potential evidence of the president's obstruction of the investigation. But absent those tapes, how is that verified?
There are a number of ways to verify it. And of course, I think one of the most compelling pieces of evidence thus far is the fact that the president urged everybody else to leave the room. You don't do that unless you have a consciousness of the guilt of your actions. But we can talk to the people around James Comey, those that were in the FBI supervisorial team, some of whom were in the room while James Comey was on the phone with the president and heard one end of the conversation. We can also obviously look at those memoranda, which we are seeking, the contemporaneous recollections of James Comey at the time of those meetings. We can also talk to the heads of the intelligence agencies and find out, did the president or the White House intervene and ask them similarly to drop the Flynn case, or to weigh in with Comey to drop the Flynn case, or to help lift the cloud, or to make public statements, anything that would corroborate James Comey. And indeed, we've already had some corroboration in the testimony of Jeff Sessions, who also said that...
Very quickly, if I could, Congressman. Paul Ryan says President Trump is new to this and just doesn't understand the protocol. Is that an explanation?
No, it isn't at all. And we don't have one ethical standard for this president and a different ethical standard for other presidents. What's more, again, getting back to the fact that, as Jeff Sessions corroborated, the president cleared the room of everyone except himself and James Comey. That signifies, I think, that this president knows all too well that it was inappropriate for him to be asking the Attorney General essentially to drop a criminal case against his most high-profile surrogate, Michael Flynn, his national security advisor. So I think there's ample indication the president knew exactly what he was doing. But more than that, I think it's a dodge, unfortunately, by our speaker to suggest that we hold this president or any president to a lesser ethical standard. There's only one standard for President of the United States.
Okay, thanks very much for joining us this morning, Congressman Schiff.
Thank you.